Hey, good evening. Welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. I wanted to share something that I listened to. Actually, this was so interesting for me. I actually downloaded it and listened to almost all the way through again, and it was by a speaker called Dr. Charles Stanley. So, if nothing else, have a listen to some of their sermons. Have a listen to them because they are extremely practical and educational. And the title was what got me. It was about controlling our thoughts. Now, I've come to several conclusions myself on this, which I very quickly found out that if I mix with the wrong people who are, and listen carefully on the way I'm describing it, if they are toxic to me. So an observation I have made is that sometimes I got two people here. I love them both. They are great friends, both of them. And with each one, this one, I bond completely. They're almost that kind of person that even if you don't see them for, I don't know, a month, 2 months, a year, 2 years, and you call them up and it's as if it was only yesterday. That's how close they are. And yet, if you introduce them to each other, it's a disaster. They do not get along at all. So, we have to make choices about the friends that we have. And my own observation, I'll get on to sharing some of the stuff that I'd heard, which is much more profound than what I'm sharing with you about my own recollections or conclusions. I just found that in the case of an extremely toxic person, I would be talking through the negative conversations that I had with him or her again, and they often could consume my thoughts. Now that was when I was still associating with them. Now, when I realized that this was the way that friendship or association was affecting me so badly, I realized that I had to stop seeing that person. Now I'm not talking about great love affairs where everything went wrong. I'm talking about friendships. I'm talking about neighbors. I'm talking about people that you perhaps work with. I'm talking about that kind of relationship, which we all have many. Now sometimes you cannot stop seeing the person altogether. If it's a friend where you have the choice of either associating with them or not, then of course that's a decision that you can make, and you can take the easy way out and say, hey, I'm not going to be coming around again, because this is too upsetting for me. And I've had that and taken that choice where I've said, I'm not going to be seeing you. This is not for me. It's too negative. I'm sure you're fine on your own, but good luck, but not for me. And I've made that decision. Now, it still comes up, and I still find myself having those, they're like phantom conversations that you have where, you've stood this person up in your mind there, and you're having this conversation and an argument, and you're rehearsing how you wish you had told him to get lost. Crazy, because it has no resolution. It's on an endless band. whenever you listen to radio, especially, and even in the Philippines, you can get the same thing happen on television. But the old DJs, when they were on for sometimes 2 or 3 hours, they would have continuous looped things. There was one guy in the UK, and he had a little kid that went and it was very infectious laugh, not like what I just did then, which was more fitting to Halloween, but yeah, little boy that laughed, and it was very infectious. Now he could put that tape in, now I'm showing my age, he could put that tape in anytime he wanted to interject that little clip, and it would play, and it would play like that, and it then would go back to the beginning and ready to play again, and he could play that whenever he wanted. And that's how some of these thoughts occupy our minds. They're on a loop. They will never go away. You have to simply close the door on them, and that's the important thing. Now, I must get on and share some of those incredible things that I learned by listening to this Dr. Stanley, which I thought that he really was amazing. He made a statement. He said, unseen thoughts produce visible consequences. Now, I'm sure that no matter who you are, no matter what your beliefs are, no matter what your interests are, you must have heard the expression, which is so very popular now, that we create our own reality. And that is true. I believe that that's true. What does it mean though? What can you do with it? You know, how can you make that help you? And here was a thought, here was a way to make that happen. And the name of this particular video was learning controlling our thoughts. Look it up for yourself. Controlling your thoughts by Dr. Charles Stanley. So you'll find that from that reference. And you'll find a lot of other good things as well that Dr. Stanley has made. But what he did was he pointed out that by asking yourself a question, you can actually find out what is this thought, way of thinking. And I jotted a few of them down. And so obviously the creating one's own reality is that we are the product of our thinking. Everything starts in thought. So it's important to be able to control your thoughts, because most of the time we think of all of our thoughts as being our own because we are thinking them. I mean, it's not always true. Sometimes they leech the energy from us in order to go on and create their own little loop. Did you ever think about a song and then be unable to get it out of your head, and it keeps on playing? It's like it has its own record player, its own DVD player or whatever, but you keep playing it over and over and over. This is thoughts which you do not want to have and should be able to control. So here's a couple of questions that I learned. We are the products of our own thinking, obviously. Now, so the first thing is, and this was a tremendous revelation to me, where you're having a thought which doesn't make you feel good. So, where will these kinds of thoughts lead me? Because they will lead you somewhere. if you're thinking about someone who you really don't like and have had a very bad breakup with, you may be thinking very destructive thoughts. Well, if you keep on thinking those destructive thoughts, where will they take you? Now, if you think about other thoughts which are, I don't know, shameful, there's enough imagery that's in the world which, if you continually thought and rethought that imagery, you played energy over them and they played again as if they're on a turntable, then they have an effect on you. If you are in association with someone who is very destructive in a violent way, you may be thinking violent thoughts. So the little list of questions, which I should tell you right one off, ask, where will these thoughts lead me? Where will they take me to? Will these thoughts get me where I want to go? So, if you're thinking thoughts which are like the friend that I mentioned, where she was relating what someone else had told her and just made her feel bad all over again. It was abuse when it happened, and now it's playing on its endless tape and it's still abuse. Well, this is something where you need to control that thought, and by asking, where will these thoughts lead me, it makes you look in a different way at, and almost like putting up a roadblock on that thought. Will these thoughts get me where I want to go? Or have I said that? Are these thoughts scripturally acceptable? Now, scripturally acceptable for those who don't read the Bible. Let's put it in another way. If it's according to Scripture, which those who study the Bible and live their life by the Bible will actually, I've learned of late, can go to an area of the Bible where they will find answers. But asking yourself if a way of thinking is scripturally acceptable is not so hard. A long time ago, I decided, when I met Beth, she was a born-again Christian. Now, I used to walk down to McDonald's where we lived, 2 or 3 miles, and I used to do that for the exercise, and I'd walk down to McDonald's. And on the way down, I used to pass a Bible study centre. And after I passed it a few times, I thought, I'm thinking to myself, I would like to learn more about the teachings of Christ, who was even then an incredible being to be followed. So I enrolled on a course, and I was fortunate that because I was a foreigner, English speaking and not speaking Visayan, the daughter of the missionary who ran that mission gave me my classes one-on-one. So we used to sit, and I would have read the Bible, and I would have read a certain section, and then we would talk about it, and she would give her take on it. And she was a scholar. She had studied Greek and Latin, and knew, as I remember, part even in Hebrew, and she was a scholar of the Bible. So I was very fortunate to be taught by her. And one of the questions that Dr. Stanley asks is, should you ask yourself, would this kind of thinking be okay with Christ? Now, a long time ago, or in America, in California, where lots of fads, both good and bad, originate, they even made little bracelets said, would Christ do this? And even before I knew that, I used to ask someone else, well, wait a moment, I loaned a book to someone, and I loaned it, and it was an important book because it was a reference book on making doors and windows, very creative book, and I loaned it to a friend. When I asked for it back, I realised now he had lost the book. That's why he couldn't give it back to me. He said, no, you gave that to me. So I said, no, I didn't give it to you, which I'm telling you now, I didn't give it to you. That was an important book, I told him, and it's a reference for me too. No, you gave it to me. And he wouldn't give it back. I realise now, of course, that reality, he had probably lost it. And instead of just telling me the truth and saying, I'm sorry, Terence, I lost it. And I would have said, okay, because it wasn't worth the friendship. It wasn't worth losing the friendship. But I remember saying to him, if Christ was the one I had loaned the book to, if I had loaned the book to Christ and I asked him for it back, and he said what you said, and that is, but Terence, you gave me the book. If I said, Jesus, please believe me, it's a mistake, I only loaned you the book, do you think that Christ would have said, sorry pal, you gave it to me? My friend, who back then was a staunch Christian, didn't quite know what to say about that, because he couldn't do anything because he'd lost the book, and it wasn't one of those that you could go and buy. So when you're trapped in certain thoughts, then you need to be able to change them, and by asking yourself questions that are pertinent, you can block those thoughts. So what's the other ones? Are these thoughts going to build me up or tear me down? Now this one is very important to me, because at the start of our channel, which is, you are watching a video on that channel now, Beth and I talked about this. At first we had lots of trolls attacking, and at first we were dealing with them because, well, we thought, well, people are entitled to their opinions, and we hadn't realised what the particular mindset of a hater or troll is. So we were trying to deal with it. But the more that we did, we realised that this is not working. It's not working for us. And that was when we said, our channel is a feel-good channel. And that was one of the questions that Dr. Stanley suggested we ask ourselves about a certain way of thinking. Will these thoughts build me up or tear me down spiritually? And that was one of the things that I said to people about when they choose to follow a certain channel. Now, it's not a question of saying, you must follow our channel, say. It's a question of saying, you need to choose what you fit in with. Does it fit you? And that was one of the other questions of Dr. Stanley. He said, does this way of thinking fit me or not? So that's another question. does the way that you're thinking, does this way, this train of thoughts which is passing through your mind, does it represent you and how you think about yourself? The other question is, and this was very interesting because it was about how open and honest you can be. Can I share what I'm thinking with someone else? Not the same as saying you should be willing to tell anybody whenever they ask, what are you thinking? Remember that old saying, a penny for your thoughts? People who were in love, in a mad love situation, would say, honey, what a penny for your thoughts, because they want to know that you're thinking about them and the thoughts are wonderful. But the penny for your thoughts was something that was a common lover's question. Well, would you, when you are in silent, this inner therapy, it's like inner self-analysis in a way, would you share those thoughts? Could you? Now, if you couldn't, then this, like the other questions, will cause you to amend the way that you're thinking, which you can do. And that was the suggestion. You don't need to think about these thoughts again. Like the lady with the terrible story and the presenter who said, tell it, tell it, tell it, tell it, tell it, stop telling it. And any other question that will lead you to a point where it's easy for you to stop that way of thinking and move on. The way that we think now is the way that we will live tomorrow. We started off with that idea there, unseen thoughts produce visible consequences. So the way that you're thinking now is going to manifest itself in some way in the future. So that's it from me. I wanted to share that because I found it particularly useful, particularly educational, because as much as I've heard people talk about how they can control the way they think, how the way that they're thinking is in line with what they want. Here's another way of looking at it. A friend of mine, the same friend with the book, I was talking about how our thoughts today will affect our tomorrow. Our thoughts yesterday are affecting the way that we're living today. And I said to him, what do you think you deserve? Tell me the life that you think you deserve. And he told me of a life that he was convinced he thought for himself. That he had good jobs, he would have a nice car and a nice truck, that people would respect the work that he did because he was honest and truthful, and all of that. Now, I said, now, okay, that's what you think you rightfully deserve. He said, yes. I said, now, and I realized later that I should have just used myself as an example because the answer was too harsh. I said, what you deserve in your own mind is what you have. How do you know what you really think you deserve? Look at what you really have. And for him, he was living in very poor conditions, had a beat-up truck, and didn't have a lot of work, even though he was a good worker. That was what he had creatively thought back then somewhere that he should have in this moment now. And I was no better. So that's another way to look at the way that you're living. The way you're living right now is a full blueprint for the way that you've been thinking. So if you're struggling and you're unhappy and people are not respecting you and all of these things, you are reaping what you have already sown. And the most bitter pill is to realize that it's you. But that's also the rainbow. That's the beam of sunlight into this dark place that you may be living in right now. And that is that as you created it, you can also uncreate it, or create a life that's different to the way that you're doing it now. But the price tag on that is undoubtedly you will have to change your behavior. Thanks for looking in. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. I hope some of these things that have been educational to me may help you. Bye for now.